For our next speaker, I'm going to switch back to English because I'm super proud to welcome Bruce McCarthy. He's coming straight from Boston. Bruce is a serial entrepreneur, is an author, an organizer, and also a speaker at multiple product, UX, and innovation conferences around the world. He helps growing organizations achieve their product vision through workshop, mentoring, and team coaching. He notably wrote the book Roadmapping Relaunched, a book that I personally both loved, read and loved. So I'm extremely excited to have him in Paris. Please give a huge warm welcome to Bruce.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I'm going to talk a little bit about one of my favorite subjects, product road mapping, but maybe it's not yours. Actually, roadmaps are pretty controversial. I work with companies all around the world, and I get, shall we say, mixed reactions on whether people like to do roadmaps. Let's have a show of hands. How many people feel that roadmaps are their favorite thing ever? They are their best friend in the world, and they really make them happy every day? No, but well, one person. Okay. All right. We should talk. One more. Okay. How many people feel like, oh my God, I've got to do a roadmap. I hate this process. Yeah, like maybe a third or almost half of you, right? Well, I want to take you on a journey actually through my love, hate, and back to love affair with product roadmaps. And maybe we can learn a few things along the way. I hope so, anyway. But it starts with actually something that Nate said this morning. If you saw in his keynote, he said, why is it that Google seems to kill as many products as they make? They seem to be kind of bad at this. And they're not the only ones. I found this scroll of that Google themselves pulled out of Wikipedia data of discontinued products. And as an industry, I think maybe we're not so great at this. Maybe we're not good at predicting whether the things we make are going to make a difference and customers are going to really value them. About half of features, according to this study from the Standish Group, that we ship as an industry are seldom or never used. More than half, actually. And then there's another 16% of sometimes. The features we use every day, maybe 20%. There's the 80-20 rule for you. So why? Why do we continually make the wrong thing all the time? We know that, just like Nate said this morning, we're supposed to go through the lean startup build, measure, learn loop, right? We know this. We've been it's been beaten into us for years, and it makes perfect sense that you validate your assumptions as you go. You move incrementally. But in reality, most of us, we probably have to admit, we build and ship and build and ship and build and ship, and we never really go back and examine, did we build the right thing, right? Right. And so roadmaps are that list of things you're going to build, right? And we hurry from one thing to the next. And that's why you see people talking about roadmaps online all the time, about why product roadmaps suck, why they're problems, why you shouldn't do them, why they are just a waste of time. And I think this was summed up best by an interview I did with David Cancel at Drift and former head of product at HubSpot. He said about roadmaps why he doesn't do them. Either I'm going to disappoint you by giving you exactly what we thought 6 months ago was the right thing, when it's not anymore, and we've since learned that, or by changing course because we learned something different, and now I've lied to you. So it feels like roadmaps are a lose-lose scenario. There's just no way to win with roadmaps. Now let me tell you a little secret. David Cancel actually does do roadmaps, I discovered by poking into his assumptions a little bit, but we'll come to that. But he's not alone. You're not alone. My experience was not unique. I've been all over the world asking people to write breakup letters with their roadmap. So they write a Dear John or a Dear Jane letter, breaking up with their roadmap, saying, it's not me, it's you. And this is just one of the many that I've collected. I've been putting so much energy into getting this relationship working, but it feels like I only give and never get any value back from you. You're always out of date. There's no way to get all the information in and keep it up to date and nice and readable. You're all about solutions and not the problems to be solved. You're never good enough for all the stakeholders, and I'm going back to Microsoft Project. That was the kicker for me. I was a Microsoft Project user reluctantly in the 90s, and I never want to go back. Let me tell you about my first product roadmaps. And I thought, wow, this is great. I have the opportunity to do a product roadmap for my product. I can put it in front of all of my stakeholders internally, and I can get them all up to speed on all the great stuff that we're doing. And I gave them tons and tons of information. You can see this classic roadmap chart with like 2 years worth of things that we're going to do, even organized by themes, and there's a key up in the corner, and there's weaselly words down at the bottom about this is subject to change and so on. And then if that wasn't enough, there were pop-ups so that you get all the details telling you exactly what everything means and what the contingencies are and so on. And I put a lot of work into this, and I put it in front of my stakeholders, and I basically got, so... There was no story. They didn't really get it. It was a list. It was a list broken up into themes, broken up into dates, and it was a list of features and technical talk, and nobody really knew what did it really add up to. So roadmaps, good, bad? I came to the conclusion for a while that they just kind of sucked, and I stopped doing them. I think a lot of us have done that, have sort of just given up on roadmaps. We're just going to go back to this. We're just going to build and measure and learn. And I've heard lots of people say, oh, we're agile, we don't do roadmaps. But then the question is, where are you headed? You're going really fast in lots of little iterations. Where? And another interview I did for this road mapping book was with Jeff Busg, a VC in the Boston area and former product manager. And he said, in so many words, I'm not investing in any company that doesn't have a solid roadmap. It's your strategy. It tells me why you exist. It tells me where you're going. I'm not fussed with all the details, but I need to understand the strategy. I need to understand the direction. So I went back to the drawing board and I said, okay, maybe I'm doing this road mapping thing wrong. What is a roadmap really? What is it? What's its job to be done? And I realized that the fundamental mistake that I was making, that so many product people make, is that I was confusing a roadmap with a project plan, with a to-do list, with a release plan, with all of the mechanics and the operational details, all of the what and none of the why. And I think a roadmap is really not a list of features and dates. A lot of the time in the seminars that I do, the first thing I ask is, what's a roadmap? And features and dates is either the first or the second thing I get out of the audience. And I think that's wrong. Let me give you an example. So Whattaphi is this US company that builds equipment for, high-tech equipment for gyms and gym owners. As those of you who are exercise buffs know, it's generally a fairly low-tech business, or at least historically it has been. They've kind of almost been anti-tech, back to just hand weights and just running and just get the right shoes and you're good. And so Whattaphi's in a good position to really change that up. Their roadmap for years was very specific. We're going to ship this thing on this date. Whattaphi Pulse on January 13th. Leads, Insights, December 30th, Rise, December 18th, etc. And they ran into problems. First of all, they kept missing the dates because they would get close to a release and then realize in user testing they hadn't got it quite right. So they needed to go back and revise. Second of all, nobody knew what any of this stuff meant. What is Whattaphi Rise? What is Arena V2? What's Arena V1 even? And so the roadmap was not helping them. It wasn't doing a job that they needed done. People were not finding it useful. People were not looking at it. But it wasn't a source of embarrassment for them as they missed the dates on mysterious things that, that they were supposedly going to be doing. So they started, see, is this scrolling well? Ooh, nice. They started actually putting coming soon rather than dates on things. And then some things were not coming so soon, they were coming later than soon. They also made it so that you could flip over these cards, and the names of things that might seem a little cryptic had at least one sentence of explanation of what is this thing and why might you care. So a little bit about the why along with the what, and not so much concentration on precisely what the dates are. And they started to find that people were finding the roadmap useful for conversations about what was important to them, because they could see a reflection of the value they were looking for from Whattaphi as a gym owner in the roadmap. So wait a second, wait. You're saying we remove features and dates from the roadmap? So what's left in the roadmap if there's no features or dates? Well, let me tell you. A roadmap is not so much a list. It's not so much a project plan. It's not an execution plan. It's a strategic communications tool. It's, in the words of Janet Bastow, CEO of ProdPad, a prototype of your strategy, something you can use to actually test your strategy with your customers and your stakeholders. It's a statement of intent and direction. It's more, instead of like a map, it's actually more like a GPS. If you think about it, today's GPS is you tell them where you want to go, and they give you the best route as of right now. But if conditions change along that route, traffic, weather, road closures, construction, whatever, then the GPS reroutes you and finds you the shortest path to your destination as of that moment. And if it's a long trip, it's probably going to recalculate a number of different times. That's what a roadmap is like, or should be. It's, in my mind, it's not so much a list of things to do. Again, it's how you anticipate that you will realize your product vision, that destination that you have set out, that you're trying to get to, that you're trying to get your customers to, and you're trying to get your product to. The roadmap really manages outcomes, if you think about it. It manages the results we are looking for from everything that we're doing, whereas a project plan or a release plan manages the outputs that hopefully are tied to those outcomes. And there should be a back and forth between the two of these. But the question, even if they are these related documents, these sister documents that work together, which one comes first? The roadmap comes first, because the roadmap explains why, and the roadmap describes the destination, and the project plan manages bits and pieces, one at a time, of how we get there. Roadmaps, people ask me all the time, can you give us a template for road mapping? And I've really resisted that, because I don't think it's about the form. It can be a Kanban board, it can be in Trello, it can be in Youre, it can be a slide deck, it can be a spreadsheet. I've seen great ones that are just stickies on a wall. I've seen great ones that are just a one-page sheet of text and bullets. Those are all fine. What makes up a roadmap, though? What are the essential elements? I want to spend maybe 5 minutes on what are the essential elements of a roadmap, the things that, if they are missing, I don't think you've got really a whole roadmap. Here are the 5 primary components: product vision, business objectives, time frames, themes, and there should be a disclaimer. Let's walk through these one at a time. The product vision, in our way of thinking, me and my co-authors for the book, is how a future world will benefit from your product when it's fully realized and ubiquitous. Your version 1, your MVP, probably doesn't have all the features it needs to fulfill your mission. You probably don't have all the users and the customers and the revenue that you want to have someday. But what is that someday, and what does it look like? Let's describe that up front. Not in detail as in a 40-page PRD or a spec or a design for every bit of the product we might ever build, but a broad, high-level vision that describes how the user will benefit, how the customer will gain value. If you can describe that at a very high level, then the steps to get there become easier to describe. Let me give you some examples. Google, they're famous for their company mission of organizing all the data in the world to make it useful and accessible to everyone. They have, some of their more successful products, a direct line between that company mission and the value that the products are meant to deliver. Chrome, their browser, is meant to provide a fast and simple way to get to that information. YouTube, to give everyone a voice. And Android, to make information accessible mobile, in a mobile manner all over the world. All of these, you can see exactly how they tie to the Google mission, and you can see exactly how they provide value to the users. It can be as simple as that, your product vision. Business objectives. This is the flip side of the vision. The vision is about how the customer becomes successful with your product. The business objectives are what your company should expect in terms of results from a successful product. It's about revenue and customers and margin and conversion rates and things like that. I prefer that you start with the product vision and then use the business objectives as a sort of a keeping track of your progress toward that vision, and as a way to make sure that you can keep funding your work in achieving that vision. Here's an example, Stellar, one of the ubiquitous Bitcoin clones out there, actually has their roadmap based on statistics like randos per week. Does anybody know what randos per week is? No, it's random people talking about Bitcoin online. And it's a measure of buzz, essentially, of press coverage. And they've built the numbers that they want to achieve right into their roadmap. Trading, pathfinding, trading fees, et cetera. And better overall brand communication, more implementation, walkthroughs, numbers. There's nothing wrong with numbers in a roadmap. Let's talk about timeframes. This is probably one of the more controversial things about roadmaps. What timeframes should you put in? Should it be quarters? Should it be months? Should it be sprints? And all of those are fine. But if we're going to differentiate a roadmap from a release plan, from a project plan, from a work plan, this is sort of an outcomes plan, well, it's more difficult to say exactly when will we be done with any given thing. So a lot of companies, especially smaller, fast-growing ones, are going to a format like this, where they've taken the themes in their roadmap, the most important problems they want to solve, and they've just organized them into broad buckets like now, next, and later. Now is the things that we're actually working on at the moment that you should expect to see emerge from the lab soon. Next is the stuff we're going to work on after that. And later is the stuff that it's on the list, but we're not sure exactly when we're going to get to it. So you can have a good conversation about that with your users. I'm going to come to this example again later. And then there's the disclaimer. A lot of people think of the disclaimer as something that the legal department or the finance department might force upon you. I disagree. I think, for example, here's GitHub's public-facing roadmap on their website, and it has a prominent disclaimer right here. This roadmap is for informational purposes only, so you shouldn't rely on this information for purchase or planning, et cetera, et cetera. That's not just weasel words. As a product person, that is your excuse when sharing the roadmap to point out that the roadmap is likely to change as more information emerges, and that your customer, the one person you're talking to right now, is a source of information. So they have the opportunity to influence your strategy right here and now as you're making the roadmap presentation to them. The themes are the heart of the roadmap, though. The themes are the problems to be solved, the obstacles to be overcome in order to realize your product vision. They can be customer problems, they can be business problems, they can be technology problems. They're best, I think, as in customer problems. If you solve customers' problems, if you do the jobs they need done, then you are very likely to have a successful product. So your roadmap isn't a list or a grouping of features. It's a list, or it's a whole bunch of themes playing out over time. Those themes are the problems, the needs, the objectives that you want to meet. You don't know exactly how long each one is going to take, probably. You don't know now what the deliverable is for every single one of them, although you probably have some good ideas. Let me give you an example. This sounds a little fuzzy. Here's the roadmap for Whattaphi. My co-author, C. Todd Lombardo, is VP of Product for Whattaphi. And here is their Trello-based roadmap. And you'll notice all through it, he describes a bunch of specific problems that they want to solve. Improve trust in the emotional analysis results, prototype, improve new user experience, etc. And in each one of these cards, he describes the problem, the outcome we're looking for the user, and multiple ideas about how we might solve that problem, each of which they plan to experiment with and iterate on to figure out which, if any, actually effectively solves the problem for the user. That's right there in the roadmap, saying we don't know what we're going to ship. Let me give you another example. A company I work with in London realized that they had a problem with payments. They had a really inefficient process. So they started off with very much a things to ship by when sort of roadmap. But in working together, they were able to describe the problems that they want to solve. They want to improve the client payment experience. They want to be able to pay with a variety of different methods. Apple Pay needs to figure out how to make it so that it's a word that the dictionary recognizes. The customers want to do that, but in the current solution, they have to tell the customer service agent they're talking to which payment method they want to use before the customer service agent can push them a form that allows them to pay for it, which creates a lot of inefficiency and sometimes lost payments when the user doesn't respond right away. The new solution is a unified payment system that allows one link that allows the user to choose the payment method, and they don't have to tell the agent in advance. So there's one fewer steps, and the user is more in control, makes the problem go away, essentially. They've shipped this in the past few weeks. Their conversion rate has made a noticeable improvement, and everyone is happy. The product manager at Whattaphi, Ellie Riggio, actually said, we accept that we don't know what features we're going to ship on the roadmap. We give the teams the freedom, the autonomy to figure it out. We set clear goals, and we let them figure out how to meet those goals. Now, we're still going to build stuff. That's still part of the job. But we need to make a differentiation between the outputs, the things we build, and the outcomes, the things we are trying to accomplish, and the impact we want those outcomes to have. Let me break this down for you a little bit. So outputs are what you produce. For Whattaphi, it was features like auto billing. The outcomes that you're looking for from those outputs, what's changed for the customer, have they become more successful? You want clients to be happier with their payment experience, and the impact that that has on the business. Ideally, that reduces your support costs, increases your conversion rate, increases your reorder rate, etc. Another way to break this down in popular terminology is objectives and key results. Notice that if you're doing objectives and key results properly, it's the outcome you want tied with measurable results, and the output's nowhere in the OKR formula. The output is a means to an end, and it's much more important, I think, to describe the end and then let the team figure out the means. So let's do summary. How do you roadmap in 30 seconds? You gather your inputs. You organize and prioritize. You place your problems to be solved into time frames. This is not the only time frame. Quarters are okay. And then from there, you derive a release plan or a sprint plan, etc. Now, I want to talk just a little bit about, suppose you have the best plan in the world. How do you get buy-in on that? Alignment is often a big challenge. You can't accomplish even the best plan in the world without the alignment of your team, without people buying into it. And my best method for doing that is something I call shuttle diplomacy. If you think of your product team in the core, in the blue circle up here, the product manager or product owner, the design person, the engineering team, that's not the whole product team, really. There are layers upon layers of onion or solar system or atom that you, depending on your favorite analogy, of stakeholders that care about what's going on in your team and can have an effect on whether you're successful and able to complete your mission. And my way of thinking is that you want to make sure you take care of conversations with all of them to understand what their needs are and what effect they want the roadmap to have in terms of outcomes for them and their department or function or other stakeholder. So you do this these one-on-one conversations with people first. Just you and that one other person. Then when you bring them all together for a group meeting, the team meeting, it goes much faster, it's much easier if you've done your pre-alignment. Language that I recommend is not, here's my roadmap, do you approve? Can I get your signature? But instead, I'm working on my roadmap and I need your input. I need your participation. Then after you've got all of their input, you've maybe made a few tweaks, clarifications, etc., you say, great, I'll present our plan to the executive team. Not my plan, our plan now, because you now have co-authorship with me of that plan. The other thing, though, that I think it's worthwhile mentioning is how often have you, as product teams or as product people, had somebody come into your office all excited with a great idea for your product that is maybe not so great? Anybody? Yeah, lots of people, right. Exactly. So what do you say in those situations? You go back to the business objectives. You go back to the product vision, and you say, okay, I'm hearing you. Let me see if I understand your idea. Can you tell me how does it support our objectives? How do you see this getting us to where we need to go? With that framing, you can have a really effective conversation about not is it a good idea or a bad idea, but where does it fall in our priority list? Is it a real slam dunk that it's going to help us reach our objectives really quickly with little effort, or maybe not? Maybe it's going to fall somewhere down the middle or the back part of the list. Okay, so we only got about one more minute. I want to wrap up as quickly as I can with a quick exercise. How do we think about roadmaps? I'm going to give everybody a 15-second exercise. I want you to draw pictures of smart people for 15 seconds. Start now. Are you drawing? It's not hard. Easy exercise. All right. Did we get any drawings? You don't have to show me. Just show your hands if you drew a picture of a smart person. Okay, I got like 1 or 2. Or there's another one, 3, 4. Okay, that's great. But it's a pretty easy exercise. You can pretty easily draw pictures of smart people, even if you're not really an artist. Something that's a little harder. Here's the next assignment. Make everybody in the room smarter in 15 seconds. I'll wait. A little hint, my family and I love Jeopardy. We watch it every night over dinner. So this is happy music for me. Okay, who raise your hand if you succeeded in making everyone smarter? Did you reach your outcome? Nobody? Okay. What's the point? The point is there's a difference between outputs, drawings, and outcomes. Everybody gets smarter. Outputs are pretty easy. Why do we make the wrong thing? Actually, I think it's because outcomes are harder. They're hard to measure. They're hard to figure out what to do about it. It's easy to be wrong about these things. Nate gave us, 4 stories, and he was wrong 3 times before he was right. But at least he learned along the way. And I think that's really the same thing about roadmaps. I think we commit way too early to outputs that we're not sure are the right thing to do 12 months in advance or 2 years in advance in some roadmaps. We need to build the build, measure, learn system into our roadmap thinking. It's okay to ship something, learn, and then ship another version of it. Our roadmaps need to be about the problems to solve, whereas our project plans can be about the solutions. Because, I mean, after all, we're product people, we're not project people, right? You finish a project or a sprint, you ship, right? But I'd ask, when are you done with your roadmap or your product? Well, when are you done with customer service? When are you done with the need to grow? When are you done with selling and servicing customers? Your product is never done, just like those other things. So if you like what I had to say, here's the book, Product Roadmaps Relaunched. I wrote it with these 3 other guys, fantastic guys. There are, I think maybe one of them is found, but there are 2 copies hidden, some of this book, signed by me with a little sticky on it saying congratulations, somewhere in the whole conference area. If you find it, tweet it out with the hashtag LPC2019 that you found it, and tweet a picture. And if you'd like to follow up with me, the easiest way is my email is bruce@productculture.org, or you can sign up for my newsletter, weekly newsletter, one thing, super short, on product culture. Thanks very much. I tried to go quick.
I guess I'll start with the first comment. That's not really a question, but it says amen.
Amen. Yeah. All right.
We saw people.
Can I get an amen?
We saw people filming the whole talk with their phone. Just so you know, everything is on video and it's going to be on the YouTube channel. Great. So no need to keep with the iPhone quality. Anyway, first question for you. How do you know when your product has to be launched at a special date because of the market?
Really good question. So yeah, sometimes there are externally imposed dates that you need to manage to. Maybe it's a trade show and you've got to do the demo. Maybe it's, despite your best efforts, sales signed a contract. Maybe somebody, I won't say who, promised it to the board, right? These things happen, and that's okay. There are weaselly ways to manage that, like we shipped version 1 even though we know it sucks, and we'll come back with version 1.1 later. But you can manage to those dates. Instead of thinking about it as we have to have the thing we thought of by the date, and whether it's ready or not, it's we have to ship what we have by a certain date. And we're going to get it as far as we can and evolve it as well as we can and learn as much as we can. And we're going to show what we have at that date.
Another question we got is clients, when looking at choosing a product in a pitch, for example, are often asking about upcoming features in order to compare with potential other solutions. Roadmap, if only a strategic vision, might be identified as too macro, cannot be trusted.
Right.
To deal with this kind of
I think that's a good point. Sometimes you will get pushback from people saying, yeah, your vision is wonderful, but are you going to ship my favorite feature? Right? You get that a lot. In fact, I've dealt with that particularly a lot. I gave a talk once in Lisbon, and it was a thematic roadmap, like I have described here, of problems to be solved. And one of our partners, one of our resellers, came up and said, in a very challenging way, well, yes, that's all very good, but you are going to ship my favorite product by the end of the year, right? And I said, well, I understand what problem you are trying to solve. You know, many of our customers have the same problem, but I don't want to tie the hands of my team to a particular solution to that problem until we're sure it's the best one. Your solution is one that we're looking at, but we have several other ideas that may be better, and we're doing a bunch of testing. Would you like to come into the lab and help us with the testing? Would you like me to talk, since this was a reseller, would you like me to talk to your customer and bring them into the process? What they're looking for when they demand specifics of the roadmap is actually not the specifics. What they're looking for is a relationship and a commitment from you that you will help them solve the problem. If they get the idea that you're working for them one way or another, then they'll usually be happy. And promising them a feature that might not be the right thing just gets you in the David cancel problem, right?
I guess a kind of similar question, but more about the stakeholders, especially if the stakeholders would like to speak more about features than outcome. How do you bring the team on board?
If the stakeholders want to talk about features, I always want to bring it back again to the objectives. The stakeholders are the internal people that are saying, well, we're obviously going to ship the what's it, right? And we're going to do that by the end of the year. Instead of answering that with a yes or a no, which is kind of a trick question, it's an attempt to manipulate you into a commitment, I step back and I say, well, hang on. What problem are you trying to solve by asking me that? What will this feature, if we were to ship it this year, do for you? I want to bring everything again back to the goals, the objectives, the outcomes that we're looking for as a company. Sometimes I know those outcomes because I've been working with the entire executive team better than the stakeholder that I'm talking to, and so I can provide that framework. But sometimes I want to start with this, I want to ask them, what problem are you trying to solve? What problem do you have in your team that you are hoping that this feature will resolve for you? And let's talk about whether this is the best solution or not. Now, if you convince me that it's actually the best solution for you, and I get the same story from other stakeholders, well, then of course we're doing it. But I want to make sure I understand the reasons why first. And I want to open up the conversation to other possible solutions that may solve their problem as well or better. I'll give you a tiny example really quickly. I worked with an engineering team. They had one pretty junior product manager and 3 engineers, super technical back-end guys. And their job was to figure out how to get adoption of the company's SDK to happen better, faster, easier. And their assumption going in was that the best way to do that was to make a bunch of changes, code changes, to make it simpler, smaller, easier to integrate. Turned out the company just had really poor documentation. So they ended up writing doc for 3 months. And the engineers were initially not that happy about it, but they said, you know what, we're solving a problem, and customers appreciate it, and we're getting great feedback on the doc, and we're improving it to make it even better. So in the end, they were happy, and they did solve the problem.
Last question for you. How do you handle the granularity of items you put in a roadmap before knowing upfront how much effort it would require to solve a given problem?
How do you know the granularity of features?
They said items, so...
Items in the roadmap before you've done your homework on it. Yeah. If I understood the question correctly, a roadmap should not be, especially for things that are fairly far out, very granular. There are times and places where inside the themes, I will list out features that I am thinking about shipping. Most of the time, I don't want to do that with stakeholders because, again, it's the potential for broken promises. But if the next release is fairly near and we're fairly far along with the features and we pretty much know what we are shipping, why not say so? If we're 80% confident at that point, I'm comfortable sharing that level of detail with stakeholders outside the development team. On the other hand, if I'm talking to the development team, and this is all internal between me, engineers, and designers, and we're in execution on a set of features for this sprint, but we need to start thinking a little bit about the next sprint or the next release or the next month or quarter or whatever, I'm willing to talk about features in that kind of an internal setting at a fairly granular level. But again, it's about trade-offs. It's about, will this feature solve the problem better than that feature? And it's in a safe environment.
And I guess final question. We got a few questions around how many roadmaps do you need to make? Like, is it per team, per squad, per company? And how do you handle dependency potentially between them?
So dependencies, how many roadmaps and dependencies? So there's 2 answers to that question. One is, do I need different roadmaps for different types of stakeholders? Like there's the customer roadmap and there's the sales roadmap. and then maybe there are different types of customers, and there's the internal roadmap, and there's the development roadmap. And my answer to that is no. You're just making too much work for yourself as a product manager. Start with one high-level thematic roadmap that says, this is our product vision, these are the problems we need to solve to achieve it, these are the business results that will come, we believe, if we are successful. Just those 5 elements that I described earlier. Then, for any particular stakeholder, a particular type of customer, a particular type of stakeholder, you can have one extra slide that gives slightly additional color or detail that they need. Like, here's the date of the upcoming trade show where we expect to have a demo, for example, for an internal, for a marketing stakeholder, for example. Or, like, here are the features that are on the likely to ship in the next release for the customer for whom those features are most relevant. So that level of detail is added in, but only on top of the same story. If you're not telling the same story to every different stakeholder, overall story, well, again, you're back to David Cancel and lying without meaning to. I hope that answers your questions. I'm around for the rest of the day if anybody has more questions.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Bruce.
Thank you.